counting me out, I'm getting it in, yeah. No time for no loss, I'm paying the cost, I'm in it to win, yeah. Refuse, mine, it can't be diffused. If you ain't thinking the same, then we playing by different rules. You can't see the vision, we living at different views. Until we complete the mission, keep getting up, never snooze. I walked a mile in my shoes, had the mind of a fool, chasing diamonds and jewels. Trust me, I was confused. Started minding my business and used my mind as a tool. Ended up finding my purpose and found the time to get to it. They told me I couldn't do it, they told me I couldn't make it. They sold it, could never break it. That's sadly mistaken. I need a piece of the pie, I want it so bad I can taste it. They told me like Toby, keep on running, toes they gon' take them. Refuse to lose, built to win, apply myself, I felt it in. No time for the doubt, they counting me out, I'm getting it in, yeah. No time for no loss, I pay for the cost, I'm winning to win, yeah. Refuse to lose, I'm built to win, apply myself.
All right, what's going on, CTC? Real quick, I'm about to mute the stream. I just want to see if the video on Twitter is working. Give me 1 second. I will be right back. Just some technical difficulty. All right, we good. And welcome back. Welcome back to CTC. I'm your gracious host, Carl, and I'm back for another episode. Last day of the round of 32, last day of the weekend for the tournament. Then we move on to Sweet 16 next Thursday. NIT has the quarterfinals on Tuesday, but they have 6 games today we're going to go over. Before I do that, I would like to ask that you leave a like, comment, share, subscribe. It helps the channel, helps the network. It helps my channel, CTC, by way of the Refuse to Lose Network. And we also got some shows on the network. We have the main show featuring Joe, Tomo, and Dave every Tuesday and Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern to about 8:30ish. Unfazed every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time. Again, Joe and AJ does Unfazed. BWT, Baseball with Teddy, which opening day, I believe, is Thursday. So if you're a baseball fan, tune in with him. We have, by the way, they did drop an episode, top 5 players in every position. And I think outfielders, they did top 10. So check that out. Next, we have FFC Fantasy Football with Coach Coombs. The GOAT, Jameis Winston, just signed with the Giants. He's been on all seasons talk, so make sure y'all check him out. Next, we have RBO, Road Ballers Only, with Vaughn. Pistons lost to Dallas. That was very disheartening, but the playoffs are coming up. Pistons, hold on, man. Hold on. I don't want to see us in the play-in. I know that was my ceiling for us, but I want us in that playoff, baby. So please hold on, but y'all check him out. In the red corner, featuring Ty, Ricky, Tomo, boxing episode every other Sunday, 7 o'clock. So make sure y'all check them out. Dave's Doghouse, highlights and lowlights of sports. So y'all make sure y'all check him out. And that's all the shows we have on the network. So please like, comment, share, subscribe with those shows as well. It helps our channel. It helps our networks. If you like what you're listening to, stick with us. Now, first, we're going to get into the NIT. We're going to knock the NIT out first real quick. We got 6 games, like I said earlier, in the NIT. As you can see, my record in the NIT is 14-4. I did go 0-2 yesterday. The Dayton-Chattanooga game was tough for me to pick. I ultimately went Dayton because of their non-con performance. Chattanooga won that game. And then George Mason surprisingly got dominated against Bradley. I did not see that one coming. So that messed up my record a little bit. But luckily I had that 14-2 before, so I can afford it. But we move on to Oklahoma State at SMU. SMU comes into this one as 9.5-point favorites. This game is today at 3 o'clock on ESPN2. So, you can flip through, I believe, the 240 game and this one. I can't remember what the 240 game is off top. But y'all can flip through those. But Oklahoma State led by Bryce Thompson, 12.5 points per game. Abu Osman, 12.3 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, and 1 steal per game. Had a big game against Wichita State. Marcellus Avery, 11.4 points per game and 4.3 rebounds per game. The X factor for me in this one is going to be Arturo Dean and his ball handling and his ability to facilitate. He's going to have to play big to counteract the guards of SMU. Now SMU, led by their guards, Boopy Miller, averaging 13.2 points per game, 5.5 assists per game, and 1.6 steals. Chuck Harris, averaging 12.8 points per game. And Matt Cross, the big man, averaging 11.9 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, and 1.2 steals. Now, to me, my X factor for this one is Samit Yatigalo and his defense on said Osman. Again, Osman had a big game against Wichita State. Going to have to control the beast down low for SMU to win this game. And his rebounding. He's averaging 6.1 rebounds per game. But ultimately, I chose SMU. Why? One, SMU is really good at home. This is a home game for them in the NIT, so I thought that was huge for them. Two, I do like the guard play of SMU. Boopie Miller was big with Wake Forest last year, and Chuck Harris was big with Butler last year. They're both playing really well this year. I do like the guard play at SMU. And Oklahoma State, again, yes, that was a convincing win against the team against Wichita State, which I did think they was going to lose that one. But I'm still not convinced about the play of Oklahoma State. So give me SMU to win this one. Next, we have Arkansas State, a team y'all know I've been rocking with all year, at North Texas. Now, North Texas is 3.5-point favorites in this game. This game is 7 o'clock on ESPNU, so nice little game to tap into. Arkansas State, they're led by Terran Todd. Terran Todd averaging 14.8 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, and 1.2 steals per game. Joseph Pinion averaging 12.3 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, and 1.2 steals. And Kobe Julian averaging 11.8 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, and 1.4 steals. Now, that X factor to me is Terrence Ford Jr. and his ability to facilitate and ball handling, because North Texas has been a really good team defensively for the past couple years. They rely on their defense, and they got guards that can score. Speaking of guards that can score, they're led by Aiden Wright. Aiden Wright averaging 15.2 points per game. Jasper Floyd averaging 8.5 points per game, 3.9 assists, and 1.3 steals. And Jonathan Massey averaging 7.9 points per game, 4.7 boards, and 1.2 steals per game. Now, that X factor to me is Latrell Jostle and his scoring off the bench, averaging 7.1 points per game off the bench. Arkansas State can put up points. Now, I think North Texas wins because of their defensive ability. Again, when you can play defense on Arkansas State, which I've always said Arkansas State can win any type of games, but it's harder when you have the ability to guard those guards, and then Pena might not be hitting shots, or Kobe Julian might be off from three. If you can affect this Arkansas State offense, which I think North Texas can, I think North Texas wins this game with Aiden Wright's scoring ability and that defense ability. So give me North Texas in this one to beat Arkansas State. We move on to Loyola Chicago at San Francisco. Loyola Chicago, really good A-10 school, coached by Drew Valentine. San Francisco, also another good WCC school, really good defensively. They're favored in this one by 5.5 points, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. So Loyola Chicago, led by Dez Watson, 13.2 points per game, 3.6 rebounds and 1.4 steals. Jaden Dawson, 13 points per game and 1.1 steals. And Shelton Edwards Jr. averaging 12 points per game, 3.6 rebounds per game. Now, that X factor to me is the big fella Miles Rubin. Got to stay out of foul trouble, controlling that paint, and blocking shots. Rim protection. That's mainly it for me for Loyola Chicago. That rim protection will be huge for the Ramblers. San Francisco, led by Malik Thomas, averaging 19.4 points per game, 3.8 boards, and 1.7 steals. Marcus Williams averaging 15.1 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. And Tyron Riley, the fourth, averaging 9.6 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 1.2 steals. Now, that X factor to me is Carlton Linger Jr. Same reason why I have Miles Rubin. Both teams led by their defense. Carlton Linger Jr. is going to have to help with rim protection. But ultimately, I think I'm going with the upset here. I'm going Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago, really good. Can go defense for defense with San Francisco. But they got 3-4 guards that can get you a bucket at any moment. And Dez Watson, Jalen Dawson, Sheldon Edwards, probably guard for it-ish. But yeah, they got guys that can go. So I'm going to roll with Loyola Chicago in the upset here. Next, we have Jack State at UC Irvine. Now, Jack State was one of my other teams that I picked to lose, and they absolutely boat raced Georgia Tech. So shout out to them from getting here. UC Irvine, it looked sketchy at first, but then second half, everything changed. Northern Colorado could not miss in the first half. Well, actually, let me take that back. Northern Colorado was missing in the start of the first half, then started to get hot and couldn't miss from the rest of the first half. But then UC Irvine turned it around, ended up winning by double digits. So shout out to UC Irvine. But for Jack State, they're led by Jaron Pierre Jr. Jaron Pierre Jr. averaging 21.8 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, and 3.8 assists. Michael Hogue, 8.6 points per game and 7.4 rebounds. And Mason Nicholson, 7.5 points per game and 1.2 steals. Their X factor to me is going to be Marcellus Bingham Jr. and his defense in the low post. Stopping the height that UC Irvine has with Ben Lighton. Speaking of Ben Lighton, he leads the UC Irvine Anteaters, averaging 15.5 points per game, 9.1 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks per game. Devin Tillis averaging 13.5 points per game and 7.6 boards. And Justin Home averaging 12 points per game, 3.7 assists, and 1.5 steals. Now, the X factor for UC Irvine to me is Torian Lee in the scoring off the bench, averaging 4.2. He has to score. He has to score coming off that bench because Jack State got guards that can go. But ultimately, I picked UC Irvine because of the length. They have the height down low that could deter shots. Benton Lighton is a really good big man. He's pretty skilled. He's tall. He blocks shots. So I like Linton down low. And I think the height is just too much for Jack State. Good first win against Georgia Tech. But I think the buck stops here with UC Irvine. Give me UC Irvine in this one. Next, we have Kent State at Stanford. Stanford comes into this one 7.5-point favorites. This game is 9 o'clock on ESPN2. For Kent State, they're led by Jalen Sullinger, 15.3 points per game. Vaughn Cameron Davis, 14.6 points per game and 3.8 rebounds per game and 1.3 steals. And Delrico Gillespie, 8 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game. Now, the X factor to me is Cleveland Hornbeak, and he's going to have to help defensively on Maxime Renard, who's just had a season, had a year. Maxime Renard is such a great player for the Stanford Cardinal, probably one of the better players the Cardinal organization or program, I should say, has had in recent years. And speaking of, he leads the Stanford Cardinal, averaging 20.1 points per game, 10.6 rebounds, and 1.4 blocks. Oziah Sellers averaging 13.8 points per game, and Jaden Blake's averaging 12.8 points per game and 4.6 assists, 1.7 steals. Now, their X factor to me is going to be Benny Gaylor yet again. And he's going to have to score off the bench to match the scoring production that Kent State has. And my winner, Kent State was a 5.5-point underdog when they beat St. Bonner. And I'm going with Kent State as a 7.5-point underdog to beat Stanford. Why? Because they travel. Stanford, yes, good home team. But the thing with college, I should say the thing with college basketball is some teams are good at home and can't travel. Kent State, they can travel. I believe they're 9-5 or 10-5 on the road, and that's really good. And they can score. Like I said, they got guards that can score. Not saying that Stanford can't, but I don't know. What if I think if Kent State can come out and smack Stanford in the mouth with a couple early buckets from their guards, Sullinger and Davis, it can get a little crunchy for Stanford. So I'm rolling with Kent State, and this one has a 7.5-point dogs to win it outright. And my last game, UAB at Santa Clara. Santa Clara is 6.5-point favorites, 9 o'clock on ESPNU. If you know me, if you've been watching my show this year, the past 2 years, I have loved UAB basketball. Even dating back to a couple years ago with Jelly Walker and Michael Abner. Last year was Yaxu Lundenberg and Eric Gaines, Tony, Alejandro Vasquez. You know, Eric Gaines is now left. But, man, I've been really rocking with UAB Blazer basketball of late. But Santa Clara, they got their own guy, and Adamo Ball, and Christoph Tilley. But let's start with UAB. UAB, led by Yaxu Lundenberg, averaging 17.7 points per game, 11.2 rebounds per game, 4.2 assists, 1.7 steals, and 1.8 blocks per game. Alejandro Vasquez averaging 11.1 points per game. Christian Coleman averaging 11.1 points per game and 6.9 rebounds. And their X factor to me is Ephraim Johnson, and his scoring averaging 8.9. He's going to have to hit some big shots in this one against Santa Clara, who plays really good defensively. Speaking of, again, led by Adamo Ball, averaging 12.9 points per game. Christoph Tilley, 12.3 points per game, 4.7 rebounds per game. And then Carlos Stewart Jr. averaging 12.1 points per game and 1.3 steals per game. Their X factor to me is Johnny O'Neal and his defense on Christian Coleman and Yaxu Lundenberg helping down low. He's one that definitely had to help because, you know, Yaxu Lundenberg, he's an athletic big who does it all for UAB. And Christian Coleman can move as well. So that'd be huge. But ultimately, I'm going with UAB. UAB was a 5.5-point underdog when they beat St. Joseph's. And I think they beat Santa Clara. Santa Clara is a really good team. Don't get me wrong. Again, really good defensively. But I think UAB matches up well. I think Lundenberg matches up. Might be a nightmare against Santa Clara. Adama Ball might be a nightmare for UAB. But I just love this UAB team. Yaxu Lundenberg does a lot. Alejandro Vasquez gets to the cup. And I think he's going to put a lot of pressure on these bigs and Lundenberg. And he could probably put one of these bigs in foul trouble. So give me UAB to beat Santa Clara. And that is it for the NIT. We move on to the round of 32, where the first game will take place in about 30 minutes. We have UConn versus Florida. I got to scroll my banners. UConn versus Florida. Now, Florida comes into this game as 9.5-point favorites. The game is 12:10 on CBS, so like I said, about 30 minutes. UConn. up and down season, mainly because Liam McNeely was out for most of it. But even when he came back, it was still a little rocky. But again, UConn led by Liam McNeely, averaging 14.2 points per game and 6.1 rebounds. Alex Caravan averaging 14.3 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks. And Solo Ball averaging 14.6 points per game, 3.6 rebounds. Now, their X factor to me is Hassan Jara, and his defense on the perimeter, because Florida got guards that can go. And speaking of the guards that Florida have, they're led by Walter Clayton Jr., All-American, averaging 17.7 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and 1.3 steals. Elijah Martin averaging 14.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, and 1.6 steals. And Will Richard averaging 13.4 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, and 1.7 steals. Now, their X factor to me is Alex Condon. I chose Alex Condon because he could put the pressure on Sanford Johnson to get him in foul trouble. And then that ultimately leads him to dominate the paint. He's a big fella that can stretch the floor. He can dominate inside. He can rebound. He can actually move. Samson Johnson can move too, but he's a little, to me, he needs a little bit more bricks in his back pocket. And so I think Alex Condon can get him in foul trouble. And I'm rolling with Florida because of that. I think Florida, their guards is just too much for UConn. UConn in the past, they had guys like Stephon Castle. They had guys like, how am I blanking on his name? Jordan Hawkins that could score. They had guys like James Bouknight that could score, even though he was early exit too. But I think these guards are just too much for UConn. So I'm going to roll with Florida in this one. Next, we have Baylor, who's a 9 seed Baylor versus 1 seed Duke. Now, Duke been dominant of late. They really have. And Cooper Flag is back. Now, Baylor, they're led by VJ Edgecombe. Before I say that, Duke's 11.5-point favorites. This game is 240 on CBS. Now, Baylor is led by VJ Edgecombe, 15 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, and 2.1 steals. Norchad O'Meara averages 15.8 points per game, 10.9 rebounds per game, 1.2 steals, and 1 block. And Rob Wright, 11.5 points per game, 4.3 assists, and 1 steal per game. Rob Wright, the phenomenal freshman, and as well as VJ Edgecombe. And their X factor to me is Jaden Nunn. They're going to have to figure out ways to score against this Duke team, and I think Jaden Nunn is going to have to be huge in that. He's a guy that can get hot. He's streaky, and once he gets going, it's hard to stop him. So I think he needs to get going in this one. Now, Duke led by, obviously, Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag is averaging 18.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.3 blocks. Con Knueppel averaging 14.1 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and 1 steal. Tyrese Proctor averaging 12.2 points per game. And the X factor to me is Kamil Malach and his defense on O'Meara. If he can defend O'Meara well, if he can possibly stay out of foul trouble defending O'Meara, because O'Meara is a big body, or maybe even get O'Meara in foul trouble, that is huge for Baylor because Baylor's depth has been kind of depleted at the big in the front courts, like big man position. So O'Meara is huge, staying out of foul trouble. But ultimately win with Duke because Duke has been locked in defensively, and they're tough to stop. And Cooper Flag, he can get going. Knueppel could hit from outside. Tyrese Proctor can hit outside. Isaiah Evans, if he comes off the bench, he can hit from outside, and he can get streaky. So I'm rolling with Duke, man. It's guard versus guard, and I like Duke guards better than Baylor's guards. But also shout out Jeremy Roach playing against his old school in this one. He's going to look for some type of vengeance. He's going to get the team hype, ready to go. He wants this game badly, I know for sure. But I'm rolling with Baylor. One last thing before I move on. I remember the coach of Colorado State was talking about Neat Clifford, which I will be talking about in a second. And they was like, who's the guy in the country who leads his team in every category? I got 2 for you. Cooper Flag, Yaxu Lundenberg. So, sorry, coach. Now, if you said guard, it kind of changes it. But, yeah, those 2 lead their team in every category. We move on. Illinois versus Kentucky. Illinois coming to this one as 2.5-point favorites. This game is 5:15 on CBS. Illinois led by Kaspars Yakutunis. And excuse me, y'all, if I start sneezing and stuff, my allergies have been acting up this morning. Case in point. My allergies been acting up, so that's why my eyes probably appear low. I seen my last video. They were definitely low in my last video. My allergies, so y'all got to excuse me. But, yeah, Yakutunis averaging 15 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, and 4.8 assists. Tomislav Ivicic averaging 12.8 points per game, 7.7 rebounds, and 1.1 blocks. And Colin Boswell averaging 12 points per game, 4.9 rebounds, and 1.1 steals per game. Their X factor to me is Trey White. He's been big scoring for Illinois. He's averaging 10.5 points per game. He's going to be big in this one against Kentucky. Now, Kentucky, they're led by Otega Owe, averaging 16.4 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, and 1.6 steals. Amari Williams averaging 10.9 points per game and 8.6 rebounds and 1.2 blocks. And Lamont Butler averaging 11 points per game, 4.3 assists, and 1.5 steals, who did play against Troy. Their X factor to me is Kobe Bryant, because Illinois, I think Illinois have at times, I'm not saying this is them consistently, but at times they have problems defending the three. He's going to be huge. He's their best three-point shooter in my opinion. So he's going to have to hit some shots today. I ultimately roll with Kentucky. Why? Because I keep telling y'all, I don't know what Illinois team is going to show up. Illinois is so hot and cold. You can get the Illinois that showed up against Xavier, who played really well and really dominated throughout. You can get the Illinois that got spanked in the Big Ten tournament, lost to Maryland in a blowout, was dropping games in the Big Ten regular season. You can get that Illinois. So I don't know what Illinois I'm going to get. Kentucky is at least consistent. Kentucky is going to score. They're going to play really good defense. And Mark Pope is a great coach. And I know he's going to have these boys ready. So I ultimately roll with Kentucky. Next, we have St. Mary's versus Alabama. Alabama comes into this one as a 5.5-point favorites. This game is 6:10 on TNT. 7 seed St. Mary's versus 2 seed Alabama. St. Mary's, again, led by Augustus Marcelonis, who they did get past the first game last year. They lost the first game as I predicted, getting upset by Grand Canyon. This year, they handled business against Vanderbilt, albeit in comeback fashion. Handled business. Alabama, they took control late when they ball game. From what I remember, against Robert Morris, they took control late and won the ball game against Robert Morris. They play at 6'10", like I said. St. Mary's, led by Augustus Marcelonis, 14.3 points per game, 6 assists, and 1.3 steals. Mitchell Saxton, 10.7 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 1.3 steals, and 1.3 blocks. Paulus Marquez, averaging 12.2 points per game and 7.9 rebounds. Their X factor to me, again, is Mikey Lewis. His three-point shooting ability, because he's going against Bama, and Bama love to chuck threes. I say it all the time. They're going to chuck up threes, and they're going to hit them. Mikey Lewis has to counter some of these threes that Bama's going to chuck up. Alabama, led by Mark Sears, 18.8 points per game, 5.1 assists. Grant Nelson, 11.6 points per game and 7.5 rebounds and 1.2 blocks. Aiden Holloway, averaging 11.2 points per game. Their X factor to me is Clifford Amarui, transfer from Rutgers. He's going to have to help Grant Nelson control that paint. With all that size that St. Mary's have, it's going to be a tough battle amongst the bigs for Bama and St. Mary's, and especially Bama defensively. And Clifford Amarui is going to be tested in this one. He's averaging 1.1 blocks per game. He needs to help control the paint. But I ultimately went with Bama. Why? Because their ability to chuck up threes. If they get to hitting those threes consistently, St. Mary's is not really an offensive program. They're really more so of a defensive program. So if you make them have to score, that's what puts them in trouble. And that's what lost them a game back in like November against Arizona State. They weren't able to match them consistently scoring. They got into it late, but it was a little too late. Arizona State hung on. Bama, if they chuck up and hit them threes, it can be dangerous early for St. Mary's. Next, we have Colorado State versus Maryland. Colorado State, a 12 seed upset Memphis, while Maryland handled business in their first round matchup against Grand Canyon. Maryland comes into this one as an 8.5-point favorite. This is all the odds I have by ESPN Bet. So you got a different book, got a different number. Again, mine were from ESPN Bet. 7-10 on TBS. Colorado State led by Nick Clifford, 18.9 points per game, 9.7 rebounds, 4.4 boards, and 1.2 steals. Jalen Lake, 11.2 points per game, and Rashawn Member averaging 7.2 points per game and 3.6 boards. Now, that X factor to me was Casey Evans, 3-point shooting the three-pointer at 44.4%. He's going to have to match some of these threes that Rodney Rice, Shelton Miguel, and Jacoby Gillespie can hit. Speaking of, Maryland led by freshman big man Derek Queen, 16.2 points per game, 9.2 rebounds, 1.1 steals, and 1.1 blocks. Jacoby Gillespie, 14.7 points per game, 4.9 assists, and 1.9 steals. And Rodney Rice averaging 13.8 points per game, which I love Rodney Rice's game. Tough shot maker, big shot maker, as well as Shelton Miguel. But my X factor is actually Juju Reese and his paint control and rebounding. He's averaging 9 boards per game. Really good defender. Athletic, big, get up and block shots. It's going to be huge controlling that paint. But ultimately, I chose Maryland. I know Maryland doesn't really have a lot of bench production. They really rely a lot on their starting five, but they are really good defensively. They really are. And Maryland can score. If Rodney Rice is hot, look out. Shelton Miguel, he hits the toughest, craziest shots that you just be like, how did that go in? And then Derek Queen is Derek Queen. So I'm rolling with Maryland in this one. Again, Colorado State, one of the hottest teams in the country. I just think is not enough in this one. Great run, great season, but I think Maryland wins this game. Next, we have Ole Miss versus Iowa State. 6 seed Ole Miss versus 3 seed Iowa State. 5.5-point favorites for Iowa State. This game is 7:45 on CBS. Ole Miss, led by Sean Padula, big shot taker, big shot maker. Huge shot late in the game to help propel them over UNC. After UNC came storming back, he's averaging 15 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and 1.8 steals. Malik Dia, 10.5 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game. And Jamin Brakefield, 10.9 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game. The X factor to me is Dre Davis and his defense with Curtis Jones coming off the bench, because Curtis Jones is just the best bench player in college basketball, and you got to contain that boy, especially with Keyshawn Gilbert being out. Iowa State, led by Tamin Lipsey, averaging 10.8 points per game and 2 steals. Curtis Jones averaging 17.1 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, and 1.2 steals per game. And Joshua Jefferson averaging 12.9 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, and 2.1 steals per game. Their X factor to me is Nate Heisey again, because, again, Keyshawn Gilbert should not be playing. So if he's not, Nate Heisey is going to have to step up and contribute to the scoring. I might as well say Milan Milosevic as well. Those two guys are going to have to step up in place of Keyshawn Gilbert. And I ultimately went Iowa State. They've been winning games without Keyshawn Gilbert this year, so this is nothing new. Ole Miss, I think they do have a tendency of letting people score a lot of points. Iowa State can get into Ole Miss defensively, and I love a defensive team that can score. So give me Iowa State in this one over Ole Miss. Next, we have New Mexico versus my MSU boys. We play tonight, 8:40 on TNT. We're 7.5-point favorites. 10th seed New Mexico versus our 2 seed Michigan State Spartans. New Mexico, before I talk about this game, y'all know I have a couple episodes where I was begging for the AP Top 25 to rank New Mexico. I've been going to bat for New Mexico all year. So it hurts that we have to play them in a tournament. I didn't want it to happen, man. I've been rooting for New Mexico all year, but sometimes you gotta kill somebody you love, man. I think we gotta do it to New Mexico. But let's get into it. So New Mexico, Donovan Dent averaging 20.6 points per game, 6.4 assists, and 1.4 steals. True Washington, 11.2 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 2.1 steals. And Junior Nelly Joseph, 14.1 points per game, 11.1 rebounds per game, 1.3 steals, and 1.5 blocks. The X factor to me is CJ Nolan. CJ Nolan was big against Marquette, knocking down big shots, hit a couple threes. He was huge against Marquette, and I think he's going to have to be huge against this defense that my Spartans have this tonight. MSU, led by Jace Richardson. Jace Richardson averaged 12.1 points per game. He's definitely stepped up this year, his freshman year. Went crazy. Jaden Akins, 12.6 points per game, 3.6 rebounds. And Jackson Kolar averaging 7.9 points per game, 7.7 rebounds per game. Now, the X factor for me is Trey Holloman for the Spartans. His defensive ability, big-time play. Like when there's big games, he normally steps his gameplay up. And his facilitation averaging 3.8 assists per game. Those are all going to be big factors for MSU, for Trey coming off the bench. Now, ultimately, went MSU. Why? Because we have depth. New Mexico down low doesn't have that much depth. So if we can get Junior Nelly Joseph in foul trouble early with our rotation of bigs, that'd be huge. And like I said, we got so much depth. We just keep throwing guys at you, throw guys at you. And I think Colin Carr, honestly, is going to have a big game in this one. He's so athletic, so springy. The stuff he does is mind-blowing. The rebounds he gets, the dunks, the putbacks, all that stuff is amazing. And if he gets the mid-range and he's hitting free throws, it's tough to stop. So I'm taking MSU in this one. In the last game I have, it's 5 seed Oregon over 5 seed Oregon versus 4 seed Arizona. Arizona comes into this one, it's 3.5-point favorites. The game is 9:40 on TBS. Oregon is led by Jackson Shelstead, 13.4 points per game, 1 steal per game. Nate Biddle, 14.1 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 2.2 blocks. And Keyshawn Bartholomew, 10.1 points per game and 1.1 steals. The X factor to me is Kwame Evans Jr. And his defense in the paint going to be huge against Henry Vazar, Owaka, Trey Townsend. His defense is going to be huge. Arizona, led by Caleb Love, 16.4 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and 1.2 steals. Jaden Bradley, 12 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and 1.8 steals. And Henry Vazar, 9.4 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, and 1.1 blocks. X factor in this one is KJ Lewis in the scoring off the bench, averaging 10.9 points per game. But I ultimately went Oregon, as I spoiled it earlier. Why? I trust their guard play. Their guard play is more consistent. Caleb Love, he's really good when he's on. But when he's off, he is terrible. He'll shoot you out of games. He'll shoot you in games. He's a roller coaster. Like, his highs are high, but his lows are low. I like Jaden Bradley. I think Jaden Bradley is a consistent guard, but Jackson Shellstead, he's going to put a lot of pressure on this Arizona team. He's really good. He can score from anywhere. He can get to the cup. He hit the three ball. He has a knack of hitting big shots as well. And Nate Biddle, I think he's going to be a problem for Vezar and a Walker down low. Again, another big that can stretch the floor, but he's really good down low. He can bang down low. I think he's going to be tough to stop. Then they got bodies. Brandon Angel down low. They could throw Kwame Evans at you. They could throw Supreme Cook at you. Don't forget about TJ Bomba. I ain't say Adrian Tracy. They got bodies that could throw at you too. So, and y'all know me. I think Dana Altman is one of the best coaches in the country. So give me Oregon in this one to beat Arizona. Now, that's the end of the episode. We have 15 minutes until our first round of 32 game. So y'all enjoy these games. Enjoy y'all Sunday. I'm enjoying not having to writing up games. A lot of games, man. My hand hurt writing up all these games. Since, Tuesday? Yeah, since Tuesday. We had the round of 68 on Tuesday. We had the NIT start on Tuesday. Round of 68 and the NIT on Wednesday. We had the round of 64 on Thursday. Round of 64 on Friday. So that's 32 games. Then the round of 32 today and yesterday. My hand hurts. But I will be back tomorrow. I will be back tomorrow night to discuss the NIT quarterfinals. The quarterfinals for the NIT start Tuesday. So Monday night I would, talk about the games, give y'all my picks and why. That's Monday. If you're new here, I don't have a consistent time. Normally because my job don't have a consistent off time. So I got to get them in when I get them in. But again, we'll be back Monday. Y'all enjoy y'all Sunday. I'm gone. Peace.
Thank you for staying to the end. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe, and also hit that notification button so you can be notified next time we put out a video. If you're listening on any podcast platform, subscribe and hit that notification button, y'all, so you can be notified we put out another podcast audio. And last but not least, hit that share button. No matter what you're listening to or watching it, hit that share button and send it to somebody that you know that would love to watch this episode you just listened to. So once again, thank you for staying to the end, and we'll see y'all in the next episode.